Right now at 6, survivors speak out and accuse their healthcare provider of ignoring warnings about a doctor now accused of decades of abuse.
He crossed the line on multiple different accounts.
Plus,
as long as you have your life, we're okay.
The bone-dry conditions and strong winds fueling a wildfire and threatening homes in the Gorge.
then later rigging rebounds for cash. The new indictment that accuses a former trailblazer of working to manipulate NBA games.
And how the current Blazers reportedly just made a big splash with a major trade deal.
Adding another guard is not something that you would think that this roster needs.
But first, here at 6, we begin with crews battling a wildfire on the Washington side of the Gorge, one that's burned over 200 acres with 0% containment. While no structures have burned, fire crews are dealing with some strong wind gusts. Thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Pitawanich.
And I'm David Mulco. Look at those winds, and let's take a look at the latest evacuation map. Red, level 3, go now. You can see that on the hillside northeast of town. A little pocket of yellow there, level 2. Covering most of the community of Lisle. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri has our update.
Outside the high school here in Lisle, Washington, and you can see how much damage has already been done to this vegetation up on top of the hill. That's where the fire started earlier Sunday afternoon, more than 24 hours ago. And since then, crews have been dealing with a strong wind, which is relentless in this area. A convoy of crews climbed the high hills above Lisle as they work to put out a wildfire that is burning dangerously close to Rocky Schultz's home.
I know every inch of the mountains up there, and it's treacherous.
She got a call from one of her friends while she was in Central Oregon on Sunday, and by the time she got home...
By the time we got here, a lot of people, local, our first boots on the ground, they're like the Marines, the locals, and our fire departments, all the general fire departments around here were there immediately.
There were level 2 and level 3 evacuation orders for many residents, including Schultz, who has done this 4 times now in the last 20 years.
You can only evacuate so much. You can have a go bag, but that's it. You don't take your memories, you don't take your heirlooms. It's conceivably you're going to lose everything, but as long as you have your life, we're okay.
Residents describe a chaotic scene Sunday afternoon, and they got ready to pack up just in case.
There was somebody telling me there's a fire officer at the back door, and the cell phone went off and the house phone all at once.
Conditions haven't made things easy on crews. They're dealing with bone-dry vegetation and strong winds.
We heavily depend on our ground resources, our firefighters digging in the dirt. However, due to the steep terrain, we do depend heavily on helicopters, as well as the scooper airplanes.
For residents like Rocky Schultz,
I'm safe right now. We got all our livestock, all our animals out.
She's thankful everyone in her community is safe. As for how strong those winds have been the last couple of days, anywhere from 30 to 40 miles an hour. But as you can tell right now, this is probably the calmest the winds have been in the last couple of hours. In Lisle, Joe Ranieri, KGW News.
Well, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Sfino. At least the temperatures are a bit cooler this week.
Yeah, but Matt, when will the wind let up?
That's going to be a couple of days, but the cooler temperatures help, and the higher humidity, especially at night, that helps too. But the wind, and it's just rough. I mean, it continues to just howl out there in the Gorge. It's dropped to 37 mile an hour gusts in the Dalles, which is really close to Lisle. Lisle's about right out there as we look out from our sky cam on the Oregon Veterans Home in the Dalles. And so these winds don't really completely relent until we get into the middle part of the week. And the gusts today have been really impressive. We've had several gusts over 40 miles an hour. And here's the forecast for tomorrow morning. Sustained, the gusts over about 30 miles an hour. That's in the morning, which is the least windy part of the day. As we go to the afternoon, they're again gusting over 35 miles an hour, probably to about 40 or even 45 miles an hour in some spots. They back off again overnight, and it's a Wednesday morning, and then they pick up again Wednesday afternoon. So you can see the next 48 hours, it's going to be challenging with that wind working on the fire out there in the Lisle area. Here are the gusts we had today. 51 miles an hour at Rowena, that's close to Lisle. Lisle itself, a gust of 43, and Hood River had a gust of 35. So again, it's fairly typical for this time of the year, but it's not good if you're trying to fight a fire. So very windy, gust of 45 miles an hour through Wednesday afternoon. The good news is the humidity overnight comes up to 70 to 85%, courtesy of this marine layer air mass we have here on the west side. And as we go to the end of the week, it's actually better news because even though it gets warmer, it won't be as windy. So that's when the crews will really catch a break, guys.
Yeah, great news, all things considered. Thanks so much, Matt.
In your headlines, a 21-year-old is dead after drowning at a popular swimming hole this weekend. The Lynn County Sheriff's Office says Kenny Trong from Kansas was visiting Blue Pool with friends, jumped off at Tamalich Falls, and was not able to get out. Witnesses say he struggled to swim toward shore before going under. The Sheriff's Office is reminding people to be cautious out there. The cliffs surrounding the pool range from 10 to 60 feet, and the water is just about 37 degrees right now.
Good reminder. Well, officials say there is no tsunami threat after a 5.5 quake struck off the Oregon coast. It hit about 130 miles west of Coos Bay at 4:30 this morning. The U.S. Geological Survey says it was about 6 miles deep and quickly followed by 2 smaller quakes.
Wow, terrifying moments on the west side of Tacoma last night. Firefighters were responding to an electrical fire at an apartment complex when that explosion happened. The building had already been evacuated, fortunately, and luckily none of the firefighters were injured. Tacoma Fire says a transformer malfunctioned and sent smoke into multiple buildings.
In a 5-4 decision, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled today that states can continue to count ballots that arrive after Election Day. The ruling came after the Republican National Committee challenged a Mississippi law allowing late arriving ballots, arguing it conflicted with federal election law. The court said, well, nothing in federal law requires ballots to be received by Election Day, and that running elections is, yes, up to the states. Both Oregon and Washington will count ballots postmarked on or before Election Day as long as they arrive within 7 days. The president today calling the ruling surprising.
The ruling, which a lot of people were waiting for, that was a ruling that was, I think it was very detrimental to honest elections, but it is what it is.
Essentially, it preserves the status quo. Oregon Secretary of State Tobias Reed called the ruling a win for voters, though is still encouraging people to vote early.
In an update, 5 additional lawsuits have been filed in connection to a Clark County pediatrician accused of child sex abuse. Dr. Michael Wilmington died by suicide shortly after the allegations came out.
And we want to warn you, the details here are not appropriate for all viewers. Celine Stevens is in the newsroom, with the follow-up. Celine?
Dan and Christine, so I heard from 2 of the victims today. They say what happened to them has given them lasting trust issues with other professionals in the medical field now.
We were completely blindsided when everything came out about him.
For some patients of Dr. Michael Wilmington, the growing sex abuse allegations and his suicide came as a shock.
But Dr. Wilmington was in my baby book since a newborn into adulthood. I even took my son to him.
One woman who wishes to remain anonymous, identified as Jane Doe 2, says he was her doctor for 20 years.
He gave me his personal cell phone number when I was no longer going to be his patient at one of my last appointments with him.
She says he also provided his email address to her when she was going through puberty to contact him with questions about her body.
So I could just go ahead and email him there because it would be faster than going through Kaiser's portal. And he did say, please feel free to send me photos. They will be safe.
She initially thought his actions were coming from a place of care, not realizing they were a part of a much larger pattern until now. Dr. Wilmington, a pediatrician, even performing her pap smear, which her attorney says should have never happened.
Most pap smears are done by gynecologists, obstetricians. They can be done by family practice doctors, right, who do kind of a wide variety of care in that way, but are rarely, if ever, done by a pediatrician.
Jane Doe 2 and her family never reported his actions, but another victim, identified as Jane Doe 5, did after an exam around 16 years ago.
He did do a very intense physical exam, and then he also suggested things, had words. He crossed the line on multiple different accounts.
She says he was her doctor at the Kaiser Permanente Salmon Creek Medical Office for a few years, but after that exam, she asked for a new doctor. When her mom contacted Kaiser,
They responded saying that he's such a great doctor. Why would you ever want to switch? We reported this. We talked to multiple people at Kaiser about this, and nothing was done. We got dismissed.
Kaiser providing a statement on Monday that reads in part that we are committed to fully understanding the facts. Caring for children is among the most profound responsibilities we hold, and it rests on trust. Continuing to say that they are committed to accountability and to acting on what we learn. Now, many victims are seeking justice.
So for me, justice would be Kaiser taking accountability for their part that they played in making it a scary place and trying to make it a safe one again.
Yeah, I want Kaiser to just be held accountable and to relook at their policies and procedures so that in the future this doesn't happen to anyone ever again.
Some of these latest complaints to Kaiser came as recent as earlier this year. Kaiser says it has initiated an external investigation to understand all the facts and inform their practices moving forward, and they urge anyone affected by Wilmington to reach out to local law enforcement. Back to you.
That's Celine Stevens there in the newsroom. Thanks, Celine.